Hey.
Hey.
Just testing. We're on the beach here at Amelia Island in Florida. You having a good time?
Having a great time.
Watching those aren't seagulls. The Jonathan Livingston seagull.
Sure.
Oh man, one of them just flew off to go find him a better wife. Oh, there he goes. I've got my Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil book. Are you going to read something?
Huh?
Are you going to read something?
Probably.
Yeah. It's crazy. I went through this, all the sound that's on this audio card.
Yeah.
And found, I heard clips of my students from 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
A lot of them who are seniors, about to be seniors. They sound so young. Alright, I just wanted to test this audio to see how it works on the beach, which is really loud. This is with the makeshift windscreen, which is really just this little nylon bag for a lens cap, or a lens. And this is without the windscreen. Oh my gosh. Wow, that makes a real difference. Wow. Your husband's very smart.
Getting a lens.
Well, I forgot my windscreen at home, and so I had to make do with one. And I was basically just going to get some paper towels, but I found this lens bag in here.
There you go.
So it works just as well. So I'm very proud of myself. Okay. All right, bye. It's about midnight right now on a Thursday evening. I guess Friday morning. And I'm a much wiser man than I was about 2 hours ago. Yeah, my wife and I got back to our hotel room a little while ago, and we had a whole day. We drove from Savannah, Georgia, to down here to Amelia Island, Florida, which really isn't that bad of a drive. It's about a 2-hour drive. So the drive wasn't bad at all. The travel day, not at all bad. But we've, been out all day driving around the island because we only have one night here. We've been on vacation all week long and in Savannah, Georgia, visiting my mother-in-law and going around and seeing the sights and just having a good time. And we decided that we wanted to extend it a night, as we often do on vacations. We're just having too good of a time, and my wife and I like to be spur of the moment on our vacations, and we just kind of look around and, is there anything else we can do, any place nearby that we can go? And we looked at this place called Amelia Island, Florida, and I'm a little bit familiar with Amelia Island. I've been here once before with my family. In 1995, I believe it was. So, quite a long time ago. That was 27 years ago? Is that right? 2005, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That's 26 years ago. Right. So, I virtually really remember nothing about that trip at all. I remember being in the hotel a lot, but it was okay because we were at this basically full service hotel. It was right there on the beach, and, they had a pool and they had a television. So that's pretty much all you need when you're like 12 years old and you're at the beach. So I looked at Amelia Island with my wife the other day, on the idea that maybe we would leave Savannah Thursday morning, and it would only take us 2 hours to drive down to Amelia Island. Then we've got like the whole day to explore, and then we'll, kind of check out of whatever hotel we stay in the next day, and explore a little bit more of the island, maybe go to the beach or something before we disembark on our 7-hour drive back home to Birmingham, Alabama. And so I started looking at hotels, and I found this one really nice hotel, the one, the balcony of which I'm sitting on right now. It's called the Florida House Inn, and it had a lot of really good reviews. When you're going to pay money for a hotel, you do want to read reviews, and a lot of people seem to like it. A lot of people seem to say that it's haunted. It is indeed. Well, it says on the website that it's like the oldest operating hotel in Florida. And I have no way of knowing if that's true or not. Not oldest hotel, but oldest operating hotel. So it's been continuously operating for something like 180 years or whatever. In Florida, everything claims to be the oldest this, the oldest that, because, you've got St. Augustine, Florida, which I believe is the oldest settlement in the States. I believe that's right? Settled by the Spanish in something like 1500, whatever, So there's a lot of old, places that purported to be the oldest, like the oldest operating hotel, the oldest operating lighthouse, fire station, pizza parlor, I don't know. Veterinary clinic, everything. So anyway, we're staying in a place that claims to be the oldest operating hotel in America. Did I say Florida? No, America, like all of America. Okay, so... And so they of course they claim that it's haunted, and my wife and I were intrigued because, my wife kind of believes in that stuff. I really don't. It just makes me paranoid. The idea that ghosts could exist. I don't really want to do anything to irritate them. So we, this is a very long story, but whatever. This is the Midnight Citizen Show. And by the way, this is the Midnight Citizen Show you're listening to. I'm your host, Mike Booty, doing a field show here, talking about my travels this week through Georgia and, northeastern Florida, right? So, yeah, we come back after a very long day. We end up going to the beach. 2 beaches, actually. We go to the one beach that we end up laying on, and, we play in the ocean a little bit, and we, sit there and read our books and all that. And then we decide to go to another beach and just walk on it for a really long time. We had a really nice time. Then we went and ate pizza, not at the oldest operating pizza parlor, but just a pizza parlor, And we came back here. We go into our room, we're kind of settling in, and I tell my wife, I'm about to go out and, have a cigar and probably, do a podcast. This is a couple of hours ago, okay? Like I said, it's been a very long day, and excuse my my fragmented speech, but so I tell my wife I'm just going to go to the bathroom first, okay? So I go into the bathroom, and everything goes okay in there. And then I use the sink, and the sink starts, notice it's not draining, right? So we've got a clog. And normally in any other hotel, this isn't really such a big deal. You go to the front desk or you call the front desk. There's usually a phone in your room, and, you get somebody to help you. You get maintenance to help you or whatever, and they come up and they take care of it. No problem at all. It's a little bit inconvenience, but ultimately no problem. Well, this hotel, There's no phone in my room, so I can't call the front desk, so I have to, put my shoes on, and I go down to the front desk, go down the stairs. There's no elevator, so I go down the stairs, and I go to the front desk. And the front desk, there's a big closed door. It's closed. There's nobody there. And I start searching around in the hotel for somebody, and literally nobody is here. This is just basically one big house. There's a bunch of rooms, and there's a front desk. That's the only place. The front desk is the only place where somebody who works in the hotel, might be at midnight. And so here I am, with a plumbing issue in a single, bedroom suite with only one bathroom, and there's nobody to help me. Okay. So I look on the window of the office door. What happens if I have an emergency? So thankfully, there is a number for after hours emergencies. Please call Ernie, and they give Ernie's number. I'm almost willing to give Ernie's number out on the podcast right now so you can call him, but I'm not going to do that. I'm so mad at Ernie right now because I get Ernie's voicemail, and the voicemail is full. So not only does he not answer the phone, but the voicemail is full. I text him. I get no reply back. Meanwhile, I'm still calling him over and over again, basically trying to just get him to pick up. And all the while I'm doing this, by the way, I'm searching every square inch of this hotel for a plunger. Because I just want to take care of this problem myself, so, I could just go out and have a cigar and do a podcast, right? So I'm searching every square inch of this hotel, and meanwhile I'm thinking that this hotel is supposed to be haunted. So I'm kind of nervous, if this were, it really does feel like The Shining. I'm searching through like a big empty hotel. There may be other guests staying here, but I have not seen anyone. It's just my wife and I. I'm making so much racket that I would expect somebody to come out and tell me to be quiet, but nobody does. And, whoa, there's a bar next door. The bar will come into the story in just a minute, by the way. So so I'm like walking through this hotel, and meanwhile I'm opening up all these doors, trying to find like some kind of a maintenance closet where like a plunger might be. Every door is locked except for one. I open this one door, and it's not a maintenance closet. It's a gigantic bar and restaurant. Again, it's like in The Shining. I go into this gigantic bar in this restaurant. There is a big empty bar area with every single kind of liquor right there in front of me. Like, I almost want to like touch a bottle just to see if it's real. And I almost expect like Lloyd the bartender to be like sitting there ready to like pour me, like a bourbon or something like that, which I gladly would have accepted because I don't think I'm an alcoholic like Jack Torrance, but I am a teacher. Like Jack Torrance was a teacher, right? I know he wanted to be a writer, but he was a teacher first and foremost. And I think most teachers want to secretly be writers. Anyway, I know I do. So, I'm really surprised that every single door in this hotel is closed except this gigantic bar and restaurant. So I start searching the bar and restaurant, opening up doors in there. I go into the bathroom, the men's bathroom, the women's bathroom. There's no plunger to be found. I go into the kitchen area, like I go into the grill area. Major health code violation, I'm sure, just looking for a plunger. I'm thankfully there's no plunger there. That would have been really disgusting if there was a plunger in like the kitchen. And then I find the maintenance area. I find the maintenance room with like a washer, dryer, all the linens, the clean and the dirty linens, all the stuff for cleaning the bathrooms. There's no plunger there. And all the while I'm kind of like, my senses are really opening up, and I'm just kind of like starting to get really paranoid because, again, I do not really believe in ghosts, but I'm also not ruling out the possibility that they could exist. Okay? So my senses are like opening up, and I'm just walking all over this hotel room. And meanwhile, by the way, you know, my wife is just kind of like waiting around and really kind of paranoid about staying in this room because, like, at the sink is, you know, plugging up. God knows what else could happen with our plumbing. And, you know, we would like to clean ourselves, take a shower. You know, we're covered in sand and grime from a day of going to the beach, not to mention, you know, driving around, and it's very hot here in Florida. I mean, it's, you know, mid-July. It's like humid as all get out. We're just covered in all sorts of everything. And we just need to take a shower. You know, but we got to get this issue solved first. And, you know, every once in a while, I'm picking up the phone. I'm calling Ernie. There's no reply at all. His mailbox was full. I text him again. I say, Ernie, I'm not mad. Just please call me. Just, we need your help, please. Okay. You know. So I just realized, you know, this there's no plunger in this hotel. There's like all of this liquor, but there's no plunger. So I figure, you know, if I'm going to solve this issue, I'm going to have to like get in the car and just go find a store. So I get in my car and I go down the main drag of Amelia Island, going gas station to gas station. None of them sell plungers. I ask them, finally, is there an open grocery store on the island? And they say, no, they're all closed. I'm like, God damn it. And finally, like a mirage on the horizon, I see the signs, the lights of a Walmart, and I'm like, oh my God, if this Walmart is open, I will never say a single bad thing about Walmart ever again. You know, and you may be saying to yourself, like, why are you freaking out over a clogged sink, Mike? It's no big deal. But, you know, I'm freaking out over it because there's no other bathroom in this hotel except the one that's in the closed bar and grill downstairs, you know? And, you know, I'm sorry, but, you know, you just kind of like expect when you get a hotel, especially for like as much as we paid for it for the night, you know, you would like everything to kind of function properly. And I just do not want to go to sleep with like a clogged up sink, right? So I go to this Walmart and it's open with 10 minutes to spare. I go in and they said, like, I don't know if you have time to get anything. We close in 10 minutes. I'm like, tell me where the plungers is and I'll be out of your hair. Okay. So they show me where the plungers are. I check out. I'm like, great, this problem is solved. I've unclogged plenty of sinks before with a plunger. I know exactly what to do. I'm going to go in. I'm going to unclog it. It's done, right? So I come back to the hotel. I go up to the stairs. I go into my hotel room. I say to my wife, like I'm going off to battle, you wait here. And I give her a kiss. And I go in there. I make the matters worse. The sink floods, and pretty soon it's over flooding onto the tile. Pretty soon, the bathroom is flooded. I'm like, okay, now genuinely we cannot stay here for the night. I call Ernie again. No response. I text him again. I'm like, Ernie, I swear, please, whatever you think I'm going to do right now. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I just need your help. Please call me back. Like I'm praying to Saint Ernie right now. You know, the god of the after hours plumbing emergencies, the patron saint of the sink and the toilet and the shower, right? So no response. I tell my wife to abandon ship, and we go down into the common area of this dark, silent hotel. And we're sitting there, and my wife all the while is just, she's already started looking for other places on the island. But the thing about being on an island in Florida in the middle of July is that there's no place to stay. Every place is booked up, okay? While she's doing that, I go out for some fresh air. Just trying to, pull myself back together, to calm myself down. And I notice that there is indeed a bar next door, full of all this bustling activity and all these drunk people and these couples. There's a couple getting into a fight on the street. And, it's a real towny bar. I don't think there are any locals, or I don't think there are any tourists there. It's like a locals bar. And so, I walk over there, and I go in there, and I'm the only one who isn't shit-faced, except for the bartender. And I go up to the bartender, and I, tell her what the situation is. We have a clogged sink next door. Do you, by chance, have any contact information for the person who owns the place, or the person? I don't even have to finish my sentence. She just puts a finger up in the air. She's like, just give me a second. It's almost like she's saying to me subconsciously or subtextually, this has happened before. Don't worry about it. Actually, it happens all the time. Okay. So, she goes and gets the phone, and she dials a number, and I'm surprised that the phone isn't red or something, she's calling Batman or something like that. And pretty soon this guy, this real, bro looking dude who looks like he just goes to the gym all the freaking time, with the backwards hat, comes in. He says, "Hey man, what can I do for you?" I tell him what the problem is, and he takes his baseball cap and he turns it around, and so it's facing backwards, and he's like, "Let's go." So I follow him next door to my hotel, and we go up the back stairs, the back way, and we go into the back entrance and go into my room, and he's just like, "You wait downstairs with your wife." I have no idea who this guy is. It's not Ernie. He doesn't sound like Ernie, right? Ernie sounded in all his voicemails or something like this. This is beyond Ernie, This is the guy that you have to call when all other channels fail, right? This is the vigilante. Okay? So my wife and I are waiting down there, and he comes down 5 minutes later, and he's like, "You're good to go." And I just asked the guy, I'm waiting at any moment for him to just throw down a smoke pellet and just disappear into the ether. And no, he's like, I was like, "Do you work for the hotel?" He's like, "No, man, I don't work for the hotel. I actually work for the bar next door." And I'm like, "Well, man, I'm so sorry that you had to leave your job to come over here." He's like, "No, man, we just help each other out down here. That's the way it is." I'm like, "Man, that's really cool. I still just think it sucks that, you have to, I would have never, figured out to come over to you in the first place. I had to go to Walmart, and I was trying to solve this problem, by myself for 2 hours before I finally got in touch with you." He's like, "It's no worries, man. Listen, man, I'm going to call the hotel in the morning, try to talk to him about your rate. I don't think you're going to have to worry about it." And then he threw down a smoke pellet and disappeared into the ether. Not really, but, so yeah. Yeah, the way my wife and I came to stay at this place, we were just going to stay at a Hampton Inn or a Marriott or something like that. Someplace that maybe had a little bit more of a, manageable day rate. But I had all these points on my credit card, There's this guy there's this guy, this financial guru named Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey always tells you to not use credit cards. He says credit cards are the devil. When you use a credit card, there's no, pain associated with swiping a credit card. You don't have this feeling of losing money. like you do when you pay cash. So just always pay cash, always use a debit card and all that stuff. But I actually find that when I use a credit card, I accumulate all these points, and I only, put charges on a credit card that I can afford anyway, that I would be, buying anyway with cash. So, after about a year or so of doing this, I accumulate enough points to, stay the night in a pretty decent, 4-star, 5-star hotel. And so I realized the other day that my wife and I, when we come down to Amelia Island, we don't have to stay at a Marriott or something like that, even though those are nice. I'm not knocking Marriotts, but I'm like, we can stay at something, with a little bit more character. So we decide to stay on the oldest operating hotel in America. Whatever this place is called, the Florida House Inn, right? So we stay at the Florida House Inn. And the thing about it is when you, next time you're looking at something and it purports to be the oldest this or the oldest that, you have to think about the infrastructure of that, I'm not saying that they're still using the same pipes that they were in the 1840s, but they're still pretty old, right? So I will definitely think about that next time I stay at a place like this. So, yeah. Yeah, I've let me relight my cigar here. It's gone. It went out a time ago. I don't know. It's like that bar is closed next door. Everybody's going home. It's quiet. Yeah, well, my wife and I got here a few weeks, a few months, a few hours ago from a day of, beach stuff. There was a live band playing out here. They were playing I don't know, bar band standards. They were playing the Wallflowers, One Headlight. When we pulled up, and we could definitely hear in between songs the lead singer of the band was giving trivia. And he was like, "Did you guys know that the guy who wrote that song, Jacob Dylan, he's Bob Dylan's son?" I don't know. I said at the beginning of that story that I'm much wiser right now than I was about 3 hours ago, before all the business with the sink happened. And you may ask, why is that? I mean, you just dealt with a clogged sink. And you found out that sometimes, you have to go above the law or above and beyond, to fix it, when nobody else is there to help you. That's not really the lesson. The reason I think I'm wise enough to never ever come to Amelia Island, Florida again, and the reason being is not because, we had this issue with our room flooding this time, but the fact that the last time that I stayed here with my family in 1995, the exact same thing happened. I'm not kidding. In 1995, my family came down here to Amelia Island, Florida. My dad had every summer in late June, early July, my dad had a conference with work that he had to go to. And there was a string of about 3 or 4 years there where he would bring us to his conferences. So I remember one year we went to San Francisco. I think that was in 1996. And that was the really big trip. We flew out there and stayed for like a week. One year we went to New York City. That was the first time I ever went to New York City. But 1995 was down here to Amelia Island. And we stayed in a really nice hotel. Like I said, they had a TV, a pool, and a beach. So I don't really remember anything else about that trip other than like going to the beach and laying by the pool and watching a lot of Nick at Night. And I remember also watching Wimbledon. Wimbledon was on television. The big tennis match they have every year. And we stayed in a room on the second floor. And I remember this very well because I remember I actually climbed. I was 12 or it was like 1995, so I would have been 12 going on 13. And I was a little 12-year-old brat. I was kind of a daredevil, and I loved to do like weird things and climb on trees and things like that. And I realized that there was actually a way for me to climb down to the first floor via like a trellis that went up and down the 13-story hotel. I don't think like the trellis connected every single floor. I think it like maybe went 2 or 3 stories up, and then there was like a gap. There was like a little railing, and then it continued. So I don't think you could actually get, climb all the way up the 13 stories. But I got on this like trellis and I just climbed down to the first floor. And so I remember that. That was like the first day that we stayed there, and my parents got like really mad at me. And then I remember our bathroom flooded. I don't know if it was like the sink or the toilet or whatever happened. But our bathroom flooded, and we had to move floors, and we had to move, like I think my dad said, like to them, can we move to a much higher floor? One where my son cannot, climb all the way down. So we did that. And I just think like, these two incidences spaced, 26 years apart, the universe is trying to tell me something. Stay away from this place. This place is not for you. Amelia Island, Florida. All you'll find here is heartache, right? So, yeah, that was a weird trip coming down to Amelia Island with my family in 1995. I did think it was 1996 initially, but I was talking to my sister the other day, my little sister, and she said, no, it was 95 because 96 was when we went to San Francisco, and we remembered that because that movie, The Rock, was coming out. That big action movie with like Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage that takes place on Alcatraz. So like that was a really big movie that summer. So like we were talking about going to San Francisco and seeing The Rock when it actually opened, and then going out to Alcatraz the next day. We did not go to see that movie because it was like an R-rated movie, and my parents didn't want me seeing it. Thought I'd be scared or something. I don't know. But yeah, Amelia Island was 1995, and I remember I had gotten like the Olympics were happening the next year in Atlanta, and it was a really big deal. Like the entire country of America, and especially like the South, was really excited because in 1865, General Sherman came down and burned down Atlanta at the end of the Civil War. And a little over a century later, they're having the world's biggest sporting event there. So, it was a pretty big coup for the South. We were really excited. And I'd gotten this like a toy in the gift shop. like, my mom had bought me like this, like they came out with like this mascot for the 1996 Olympic Games. It was like a little dot. It wasn't like a stuffed animal. It was like a blue dot or something like that. I don't know what it was, but I think the thing's name was like Izzy or something like that. Is that what it was? Now, what is this thing? Like I've always wondered about this. And it just seems like the 1996 like Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta are just kind of like the black dog of Olympic Games. Like nobody ever talks about them, but when you go to Atlanta, like they want to make sure that you know that they happen there. Like the only thing that people seem to remember about the 1996 Olympic Games was the fact that there was a terrorist bombing there. Everybody thought it was this like fat security guard named Richard Jewell, but it wasn't. It was like this guy named Eric Robert Rudolph who had also like bombed an abortion clinic in Birmingham across from like my favorite restaurant in Birmingham when I was in college. Anyway, okay, so like 96. I'm looking this up on my phone here, and I don't normally like to do this. I usually like to do my podcast with like all the information already in my brain, but yeah, I look it up. 96 Olympic bombing. That's the first thing that comes up. No, I don't want to know about that. I'm the Midnight Citizen here. I don't want to know about violent things. I want to know about, like innocent things like mascots. All right, 96 Olympic mascot. Yeah, there he is right there. His name was Izzy. I didn't know if I had named him Izzy myself when I got that little stuffed animal. All right, Izzy was the official mascot of the Atlanta 1996 Summer Olympics, initially named What Is It? What Is It? At its introduction at the close of the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona. Because, yeah, every year at the end of the Olympics, they announce where the next Olympics are going to be. So, the animated character with the ability to morph into different forms was a departure from the Olympic tradition in that it did not represent a nationally significant animal or human figure. Yeah, it was just like a thing. Created by John Ryan. Izzy. That's funny because I have a dog named Izzy. I have a basset hound named Izzy. There's that cute little... I mean, he's a cute little thing. There he is posing with Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich. Yeah. So I had this little stuffed animal that was the 1996 Olympic mascot named Izzy. And I remember I had that thing, and I was just kind of, got it as like a souvenir, even though it didn't really represent a souvenir of my trip down here to Florida. But nevertheless, it represented like an important period of time in American history, which is, the 1996 Summer Olympic Games. And those Olympic Games were held all over the place. And I don't know if the games are generally like this wherever else they are. But they were kind of held all over the South, like not just in Atlanta. Like Atlanta was the home base, but they had events all over the place. Like they had kayaking and stuff like that on the Ocoee River, which is, runs outside of Atlanta. And then they had the soccer here in Birmingham, or not here in Birmingham, not in Birmingham right now, but in Birmingham. And I actually went to an Olympic soccer game at Legion Field. And even today, when you go to Legion Field in Birmingham, it says, home of the 1996 Summer Olympic Games. And I suspect it will say that until the place is eventually, demolished and torn down. But anyway. So that was the last time I was here, was 26 years ago. And the circumstances have not really changed that much. Like, I'm a little bit older, and I'm married, but I'm still dealing with, like, a flooded bathroom. And just like that, I'm home. Home from vacation. My wife and I got back into town about 4 hours ago or so. And began the long, arduous process of settling back in, which is something that you try not to think about. You know, when you go on vacation, you try to put it out of your mind and just enjoy yourself. But, you know, a day or so before you come back home, you start to think about everything that you have to get back into, you know. Like we had to go pick up the dogs from the parents. You know, they could not keep them another night, so we had to go get Izzy and Zoe, the Basset Hounds, and we had to go to the grocery store because we had, like, nothing to eat here. We came home, we had to, like, unpack. I had to do laundry because I had, like, really no clean clothes to wear that were, like, suitable for lounging around. So yeah, it was a lot. I just kind of had to think of the whole thing in phases. You know, like phase 1, come into town. Phase 2, pick up the pets, the dogs. Phase 3, unpack. Phase 4, go to the liquor store because I have no liquor. And I'm definitely going to want to watch some whiskey later. You know, phase 5, take a shower. Anyway. Yeah, we kind of left Amelia Island like we were evacuating today. As a matter of fact, you know, in Florida, you follow highways that just all say evacuation routes, you know, in case of hurricane or something like that, or tsunami. And, you know, we were following the evacuation route today. Just coming back from Amelia Island. I woke up at about 7 o'clock this morning. I got virtually no sleep last night. After I came in from recording that little piece of audio you just heard. Just, you know, could not sleep. And, because I was just, like, so irritated by the whole experience. You know, the idea that I had to go next door to the bar and get the guy, the general manager, you know, to help me out with my sink. And this morning, you know, my wife and I, we decided to, you know, go get breakfast. Just like go and sit someplace nice, and we found like a nice little breakfast restaurant and sat out there by the lake. And as we were there having our eggs and our coffee, I get a text, and it's Ernie. You know, the wayward maintenance man, the after-hours emergency guy, saying, I'm so sorry. You know, I spoke to Lawrence, who I guess is the general manager, who helped me out last night. Said I spoke to Lawrence. He said everything was resolved. I'll try to get you a $50 credit for the inconvenience. So I you know, there's this whole thing that I kind of wrestled with, this just dilemma of, like, I could, at 9 o'clock when the place opens, when somebody is actually there at the hotel, I can call them and, you know, demand not $50 back, but my entire fee, because it just was, the whole episode really did soil the experience of staying at that hotel. But I just decided not to. I just decided, like, listen, if they can get me the $50 back, whatever. But, I mean, at the same time, I may feel completely differently tomorrow. I mean, it's been a long day, and I may wake up tomorrow just wanting justice, you know? And, I mean, I worked hard to, you know, accumulate the points to get that hotel, and I just basically kind of wasted them on, like, on an inn that was just run improperly. And so I really don't know. But at the same time, I kind of just want to put the whole episode behind me and just think about the good times we had on vacation. And we did have some good times. We did have some good times on this vacation. I'm not going to lie. We'll talk about it in a minute. Yeah, we got out of there so quickly today that it kind of it did spoil one last thing that I wanted to do on vacation. I wanted to go to a Denny's restaurant for breakfast. And not because I really like Denny's. In fact, I never eat there ever. All the Denny's restaurants in the world can close down tomorrow, and I wouldn't know. You know, Denny's is like, I don't know, it's kind of like IHOP or Waffle House. You know, just these places that have a big, just disgusting menu of cholesterol and starches and all that. And their signature dish is called the Grand Slam Breakfast, which is so gross. The way that sounds. I don't think of baseball when I think of the Grand Slam Breakfast. But it was an inside joke, though. That's why I wanted to go to Denny's. It was an inside joke with my family because to this day, when my family and we talk about Amelia Island, Florida, you know, we don't talk about the beach or the pool or sitting there, you know, at the TV, in front of the TV watching like Wimbledon or Nick at Night, you know, watching like Mr. Ed and the Mary Tyler Moore Show and all that. We talk about Denny's. And this is because, they talk about Denny's and me climbing out of the window onto the first floor. But anyway, I talked about that already. Yeah, when we came down to Amelia Island, Florida, like that first day from Birmingham, we were really hungry, and it was very late, and I'm sure my parents just were not happy with like a carload of, you know, kids who were starving. And so we pulled into the first place. My dad pulled into the first halfway decent looking place, which was a Denny's. And we went to Denny's just kind of, no, we don't want to eat Denny's, you know, and my parents are, you know, kind of looking for something a little bit better, more classy, I guess. I don't know. And we eat at Denny's, and we cannot stop talking about how good that meal was. And I think it's just because we were so hungry. You know, when you're that hungry and when you've been in the car for 8 hours, not really eating much, you know, anything is great. So Denny's at like 9 o'clock in the evening was just a godsend to us. And so we loved Denny's. And so we get to our hotel and we check in and we go on up and I do my thing where I climb out the window and the next day we all wake up and my dad goes off to his conference because, you know, as I said before, he was there for work. And so my mom is left with, you know, 3 kids to take care of and entertain for the day. And, the first decision of many that she has to make that day is, you know, what do we need to do for breakfast? And I guess there's like there's like restaurants on the property, but ultimately what she decides to do and what we are totally okay with is she says, let's just go back to Denny's. And we're like, yay! So my mom piled us into the minivan and we start looking for this Denny's. And of course, this is 1995. It's not like this is a million years ago, but you know, this is in the days before, you know, smartphones and GPS and TomToms and all that stuff. And my mom just has like her memory to go on to get us back to, you know, Denny's. And it seems pretty obvious, like on an island, most islands, they just have like a straightaway and you get on it and you basically just retrace your steps and go, you know, several miles back the way you came, and you should hit like a Denny's. And we disembarked from the hotel at about 9:30 in the morning, thinking that we're going to be back at Denny's in maybe like, you know, 30 minutes or so. And meanwhile, we're passing probably like all these perfectly reasonable breakfast places along the way that serve the exact same meal, just with a different name. And, 10 o'clock comes and my mom doesn't see the Denny's, and we're at the place where we think it should be, and, there's just no Denny's. And she turns around and retraces her steps, and maybe this time she takes a right instead of going straight ahead. No Denny's. Take a left, retrace your steps, go back more, like another 5 miles or so, no Denny's. Before you know it, it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, and finally 11:30, we find this Denny's. Things look a lot differently in the light of day than they do at like 9 o'clock at night. And so by this time, I'm sure that we're just all insufferable in the back seat. And my mom is tired, and she's worn down. And we pull into the parking lot of this Denny's like we've just kind of like, traipsed in from the desert. And the poor waitress, like we go into the Denny's and my mom goes up to the hostess. And the hostess has like a big smile on her face, like, "Hello, can I treat you to a Grand Slam breakfast today?" And my mom says, "How dare you? We have been looking for this restaurant for the last 2.5 hours. We want a table right now." And that's what we talk about to this day. So I really wanted to find this Denny's, and that is the thing about these places, is that, these chain restaurants, they stay open for years. So 26 years later, I'm probably sure that this, Denny's is probably still around. But again, my wife and I just want to get out of there so bad. And I have no time for inside jokes. So, but I do just think about that memory. It's like the last time that I was leaving this island, it was in distress. Again, I don't think I'm ever coming back to this Amelia Island ever again. In Florida, I just remember after that episode with the Denny's, my mom took us back to the hotel room, and we were gonna go to the beach and all that, but we just like kind of collapsed on the bed and watched Wimbledon. Watched tennis. So yeah. So, but yeah, it's Friday night here, and it's crazy to think. We went to Savannah. We left for Savannah on Monday. Somebody's listening to the Doors out there. We're on the road. I was listening to the Doors really loudly. God dang, it's loud. Yeah. So, Savannah, I kind of think of as like my second city in a way. I think I've probably visited Savannah, Georgia, probably more than any other American city. Washington, D.C., I think, comes close. I've been to Washington, D.C. many times, but Savannah, Georgia, I've been to a lot, especially since I've, well, the first time I ever went there was with my wife, because my mother-in-law lives there. And, she's set up a nice life for herself out there, and, she does a lot of work. She's an acting teacher, and she kind of has this very tight-knit network of actors that she works with over there. And she just kind of knows everybody, my mother-in-law, G. Marie. And really this week was just kind of like a week of her just plugging connections to get us to do really cool things. And I really do have to give her a lot of credit. Normally, when my wife and I go on vacation, whether it be to like Chicago or Niagara Falls or Wisconsin, you know, we're just kind of planning everything that we do day to day. But whenever you go to Savannah, you know, G. Marie just kind of plans everything for you. And it is kind of nice to have somebody else just like be your concierge and tell you, you know, and it's not like she's forcing us to do these things, but we're very grateful to have her help. And we've definitely, you know, just turned her down a few times. Like, no, we think we'd rather do this. And I really do appreciate it. But, you know, but we go to Savannah and she sets us up in this really nice bed and breakfast, which, yes, is like the oldest operating bed and breakfast in Savannah. Only the plumbing is better there. It's called, it's just called the Savannah Bed and Breakfast. It's right there on Chatham Square, you know. And she sets us up in this place for 3 nights, and it's just beautiful. She does it. It's a birthday present for my wife, who just had her birthday a couple weeks ago. So this is like a belated present. My wife was working on her birthday, so this is the first time we could get away. So yeah, we went to this nice Savannah bed and breakfast. And, you know, got this nice room and had this gigantic porch. So each night after we would do our thing, we would come home and, you know, Jessica joined me one night, but most of the time I just, you know, sit outside on the, you know, back porch and, you know, and I had the porch completely to myself. Nobody else came out at night. I guess because it was so humid, but I don't know. You're just in Savannah. And it's your vacation. I never understand people who just want to like go in to their hotel at the end of the day. You know, I love being outside, especially at night after a long day. And, you know, having like some whiskey and, you know, I bought some cigars. I bought some really nice pipe tobacco. So just sitting out there each night, just enjoying the evening, even though it was very humid, you know. So, but yeah, we just enjoyed, most of all, just walking around the streets of Savannah. It's just an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful city. It's probably like the most beautiful planned city that I've ever visited. In terms of just like, in the 1950s, I think the place was essentially a slum. A lot of the historic buildings, you know, that have been there since like, some of them since the 1700s had just been completely, you know, forgotten. And, they've just fallen into a state of disrepair. And then, people started stepping in and just, you know, chipping in and buying all these old buildings and restoring them bit by bit. And now it's just got one of the most, well-preserved historic districts in America, if not the world. One of the oldest buildings in the entire country that's still standing is in Savannah. It's the Pirate's Inn, or the Pirate House. It's been there since 1680, something like that. And I've had dinner in it. It's a beautiful place. I'm sure it looks nothing like it used to, but it's actually mentioned in Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. It's the house where the pirate comes from at the beginning of the novel, who ends up giving the map to the protagonist of how to get to Treasure Island. So, Billy Bones or whatever his name is. It's been years since I've read Treasure Island, but yeah, you can't really walk anywhere in Savannah, go into any shop or talk to anyone without one thing inevitably being mentioned, and that's the book that was later turned into the movie that was directed by Clint Eastwood, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I really don't know of any other book in the history of books that has probably done more for one city's tourism industry than Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And indeed, when you like look for, a tour to go on in Savannah, which, you kind of have to be a tourist in this place. It's just too nice. You pass too many cool things not to have the desire to walk around with somebody who can interpret it all for you. Everything is kind of named after Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil tour. There's the John Burt tour. I think that's how you say his name. He's the guy who wrote the book. There's the Beyond Good and Evil tour. There's the Jim Williams tour, And it's just everything has to do with this book that was published in 1994. And, individual real-life people who made their way into that book are celebrities in their own right, specifically the Lady Chablis, the transgender drag performer who's featured heavily in that book, and she just died a few years ago. But yeah, it's like you go all over the place and you see pictures of her, you see her autobiography in every single store. She became a huge, not just local celebrity, but national celebrity after the publication of that book. And I believe she actually played herself in the movie that came out in 1997. So, like, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and I've read it once, I'm actually in the middle of reading it a second time, is a book about Savannah. It started as a book just about kind of the local color and all the crazy kooky characters who live in Savannah. That's how the author started out writing the book, is that he started moving down to Savannah, like living there and splitting his time between Savannah and New York City, where he was an editor, I think, for Esquire magazine. And he just came down and just found all these, goofy characters. I think that, like, John Cusack, who plays him in the movie, describes Savannah as, like, Gone with the Wind on mescaline. And it's kind of like that, It's like this weird southern city, but doesn't really follow a lot of southern traditions. Or I guess it does. It has, like, this, local Savannah, local southern color, but all the people are just slightly off-kilter, Like, there's the inventor who claims that he's going to poison Savannah's water supply because he has access to a very highly volatile poison. And he anesthetizes flies and ties strings to them and has them swarm around him. His neck, he, like, ties the strings to his coat. And there's, like, people like Joe, and this guy named Joe, who always, like, moves from house to house. He's basically like a glorified squatter. Every time somebody goes out of town, he basically moves into their house and hijacks the electricity of the house next door. Things like that. And he has, like, all these creditors in town chasing him, but they all love him so much because he's just like this charismatic Southern gentleman, So, it's all well and good, and, I think that he could have had a very interesting book if it, even if it weren't for what really happened that made the book, a national bestseller for like 4 years straight, and became this huge movie directed by Clint Eastwood, starring like John Cusack and Kevin Spacey, who I know has been like, canceled now, but anyway. So what happened was that there was this man named Jim Williams, who was indeed one of the people who, beginning in the 1950s, was fighting for the preservation of all of Savannah's historic district and all the old buildings that had fallen into disrepair and dilapidation. And he was new money, which was against the grain in Savannah. Savannah's a very old money city. The people who have had their money have been wealthy for generations. And Jim Williams seemed to come out of poverty from this small town in Georgia called Vidalia. And he started as a young child, like, flipping antiques. Flipping antiques is very in vogue now. You know, you get something that nobody really has any use for, you restore it, and then suddenly you sell it for a huge profit. Jim Williams was doing that when he was a kid. And so by the time he was in his 20s and 30s, he was a millionaire, and he moved to Savannah and took up the prospect of not only flipping antiques from all over the world, but also buying up houses in Savannah and restoring them. And two of the most famous ones were the house where he lived, called the Mercer, which is now called the Mercer-Williams house. A lot of houses have that hyphenate there to signify who the original owner was and to signify who, like, the most famous or important owner was, I guess. And, of course, Williams was Jim Williams, but the Mercer was the great-grandfather of Johnny Mercer, the songwriter, who, of course, wrote many, many songs, like Moon River, and one of my favorite songs, like The Long Goodbye, from one of my favorite Robert Altman movies. You know, it's The Long Goodbye, and it happens every day. You know. So Johnny Mercer, his great-grandfather never actually lived in the house. That's like a lot of people misunderstand that. He built the house, but never got to live in it because of the Civil War. Kind of took him away from it, and I think he died before he could take up residence. But anyway. So Jim Williams bought this house and fixed it up, and now it's like a beautiful, ornate house, kind of at the heart of the historic district. You can take a tour of it. And, of course, you know, see all the nice, you know, antiques and all that he took up and restored, and see the place as it was when he actually, you know, when he died. But a lot of people like to tour the house because of what happened there. That really takes up the bulk of the novel, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. But I'll get to that in just a minute. The other house that he bought and fixed up is called the Pink House, or the Old Pink House, which is just one big pink house, but it's beautiful, and it's got a restaurant in it, and that's where my mother-in-law took us to eat the other night on our last night in Savannah. So anyway. Okay, so what happened in the Mercer-Williams house? Okay, so there was this young stud named Danny Hansford. And Danny Hansford was like one of these good old boys, southern rednecks, who was shot dead in the Mercer-Williams house by none other than Jim Williams. They were apparently in the middle of a big argument. What they were arguing about, nobody really knows. But by the end of it, Danny Hansford was dead, and Jim Williams was holding the gun, claiming that it was self-defense. And so Jim Williams was arrested and tried. And by the end of the whole saga, Jim Williams had been through 4 different separate murder trials in 4 different districts and was eventually exonerated on the grounds of self-defense. You know, Georgia is one of these like classic southern stand your ground states. You know, if you go into somebody's house yelling and screaming and threatening violence and you get shot, well, 9 times out of 10, a jury is going to probably find you innocent or not guilty, right? So, and that's what the book is about. You know, the book is about the trial. Of course, the movie condenses it all down into one trial, but I think what's most fascinating about the entire case is that it was, 4 separate trials, the most of any other murder trial in Georgia history. So, it was quite a landmark, and Jim Williams was eventually found not guilty. But by the end of it, of course, what's fascinating about the trial is that it brought out a lot of Savannah's kind of hidden prejudices, namely against homosexuals. Savannah is kind of thought to be a cradle of progressivism in an otherwise very conservative state. But the jury kept on, coming back as essentially finding the homosexual nature of Jim Williams' relationship with Danny Hansford problematic, and just not being able to square themselves with the fact that they were, letting a known homosexual off. of a murder rap. So it's a very interesting cultural study of a town that purports to be very progressive and ahead of its time, when in fact it's really not. So. But yeah, the novel, the nonfiction novel is very good. It came out in 1994, and it is really responsible for not just bringing Savannah to international attention, but reviving it as just one of the premier tourist destinations in the South. And today, when you go there, there's a ton of tourism. You can't go 5 seconds without seeing a trolley driving by, the Mercer Williams house, or seeing namely like a ghost tour. There, are a ton of ghost tours, because Savannah is said time and time and again by paranormal investigators to be the most haunted, town in the entire country. And I have no idea how they rank these things, but people believe that Savannah is very haunted. Namely because it's, one of the oldest cities in the United States. And the town has suffered, numerous massive tragedies throughout its, 400-year history. Namely several fires, It actually managed to escape the Civil War fairly unharmed. And it's actually kind of a funny story because, during, when General Sherman came down from the north to burn Atlanta and basically just tear ass through the South, eventually coming to my hometown of Birmingham and burning down all the iron furnaces and everything, they went to Savannah with the intention of burning the place to the ground because it was a major, port for the Confederacy. It was an incredibly strategic area, for them to, ship supplies back and forth and all that. And the founders of Savannah cared so much about their town that they essentially, convinced the military there to ride out to the edge of town and confront Sherman's troops and basically saying, listen, we'll surrender unconditionally. Just do not burn everything that we've worked for to the ground. And, and I guess, probably back in the day, that was a controversial decision because that's not a very manly stance. You're supposed to stay and fight, right? But no, they really cared about what they had there in Savannah. It was a very special place. And so, the Yankees agreed. They're like, okay, fine, just let us take over your town and we won't touch a thing. So they came down, right? But no, mostly, there were a lot of fires, but, just a lot of death. Savannah was a notoriously violent town, a very criminally violent town. They have these tunnels underneath River Street, which today is the really big tourist thoroughfare in Savannah, where all of the, fudge shops and Christmas tree shops and the novelty T-shirt shops are. Where you can go if you don't really want to learn anything. You just want to eat dribbly food and say that you visited Savannah. But underneath River Street are a bunch of tunnels, and I guess back in the pirate days, the pirates would kind of run the scam where, they would bring unsuspecting people into the bars and give them a lot to drink, and then they would poison them essentially. And when the drinkers were, woke up, they would be on the ship. They would be on a pirate ship. They would be slaves. And that's called being shanghaied. So I guess it comes from the Far East or something. But yeah, the most notable thing, though, is when you walk around in Savannah, you're walking around, the streets are very uneven, and you're walking over bumps constantly. Specifically past cemeteries, and that's because the cemeteries, the gates of the cemeteries are really just there for decorative purposes. Really, the entire town is a cemetery. It's built on top of just graves. People are buried everywhere in Savannah, and so that's why people say that it's very haunted. But so I don't know. Again, like I was saying last night, I don't really believe in ghosts. But I also, at the same time, I don't know, I kind of think of it as like my belief in God. Like I'm not an atheist. I think I am an agnostic. I think that there are things that are going on in this world that are just beyond our understanding. There are parallel dimensions. There are parallel beings. Call them time travelers, call them God. I don't know. Call them ghosts. I don't want to piss them off, so I just kind of try to maintain my respect, Like, I know that I talk against religion quite a lot, especially on a podcast that I did a couple of weeks ago called Skip the Preach and Go to the Beach. But primarily, like, I'm not really against God if he or she or it does exist. I'm just against the jerk-offs that represent him. I don't like those people really that much at all. I mean, they're just kind of... They're just kind of a drag, okay? Same kind of goes for, like, people who believe in ghosts, like, and really try to make contact with ghosts. Like, it's not that I necessarily am denying the existence of ghosts. They may exist or they may not exist. It's like just these people who go into these places and try to make contact with them really bug me. They bother me quite a lot, But I am curious, and I'm going to maintain an open mind. So, whenever I go to Savannah with my wife, I do go on ghost tours because my wife really likes this stuff. And, my wife and I, we really do like, horror movies, and we like ghost stories and things like that. Things that kind of send a chill up your spine. I like that stuff. It's entertaining, right? Even though I don't necessarily believe in it. So we do go on these ghost tours, and we went on one the other night to this place called the Sorrel-Weed House, which is said to be, like the most haunted, location in Savannah, which is supposed to imply, this is the most haunted place in the most haunted place in the world, or in the United States. Okay. So it's like, if you're going to see activity, you're going to see it here, right? And, this is actually the second time we've gone on this tour. My wife and I went, the last time we went to Savannah about 3 years ago, or was it 4 years ago? Yeah, I think it was 4 years ago. We went to this place called the Sorrel-Weed House, and we like this place because it's the only tour that you can do in Savannah, a ghost tour, that's not like taking you around on a trolley, or you're not walking around from like bar to bar buying a bunch of beer. It's like they do these pub crawls, these haunted pub crawls. It's just like this one place that gives you pretty good access to just, even if you don't believe in the ghost, it's like a really amazing house. I mean, it was built in the 1830s. And it's got, period furniture. I don't know if it's original furniture or not, but it's just a really cool house to walk through. And it's always stuck in my mind, and it's always something that I've wanted to do. Again, is walk through the Sorrel-Weed House in Savannah, Georgia. So, so we go through this house, and this time I bring my recorder. I actually recorded the entire hour-long tour, which I will, I think I'll play that. Like, once I'm done talking and all that, I'll put it on here as kind of a bonus podcast on this recording. It'll be like the B-side, so you can listen to it. Because it is a very entertaining tour, and they do encourage people to bring recorders because they want to try to capture, they want them to try and capture like EVPs, these electronic voice phenomenon. The idea that if you've got a recorder and there are things that you cannot hear with the naked ear, there's something that your recorder or your phone or your camera will be able to pick up, so they encourage it. And they want you to release it. So I'll release it just for entertainment purposes, but, maybe you can hear it. And I have not heard the recording yet, so I don't know if something will, show up, if like a ghost will start like talking I don't know. I will say, though, that the first time that my wife and I ever went to Savannah, Georgia, back in 2013, we did go on like a haunted pub crawl. And it's one of these things where you show up at a bar and they give you a beer, and then you go to like another bar and they give you another beer. You go to another bar, another beer, and by the end of it, you're just like dying because it's like 100 degrees with like 90% humidity. And you're drunk and you're just sweating alcohol. And by that time, you will be seeing ghosts, right? I think that's what they're hoping. But anyway. But, yeah, my wife and I did go on this tour back in 2013, and I had my recorder. And I was listening back to the audio the next day, and I heard something on there that I genuinely could not explain. I'm not saying it was a ghost, but it was an anomaly, okay? And I've played it on this podcast, on the Midnight Citizen Show, several times, and I'll play it for you here now, so I'm going to stop talking and let you hear it. This is from February of 2013 on an episode called Supposedly Haunted Savannah. So you can hear it now. And I'm going to relight my cigar.
Please, sir. No.
I'm going to Photoshop that in early.
Do it. With your arm around it. Would you mind?
I'm sure all those ghosts are really pissed off that they have to stay in this...
Entertain.
Well, they have to stay in this big room full of kegs of beer, so it's like a constant tease for the rest of their eternal lives, or mortal, their eternal lives.
Yeah.
Most of our photos are from he's be in charge of all of that now, so
I'll send that up.
Why is really bright? Do you see a flashlight on your phone?
No.
Because I was trying to see.
I did, yeah.
Here, maybe if I was like take a flash, you can see it.
So,
See up there.
So,
I want to be able to.
Okay, so I don't know what that sounded like to you, but it just sounded like somebody was breathing into my microphone. And I remember very specifically when I was recording that and where in what position I was holding my recorder. So we were in the Moon River Brewing Company, which is on Bay Street, which is the street that runs parallel to River Street, the major, as I said, tourist thoroughfare in Savannah. And, it's a bar, but it's been many, many things in its 180-year history. Like, it was a hospital at one point that housed both, Confederate and Yankee soldiers during the Civil War. It's been like a doctor's office and things like that. But we were upstairs at the bar, and in a place where they keep all the kegs and all that, and it's basically just storage. It's very hot and it's very musty up there. And we went into this one area where there's just a bunch of empty kegs. And our tour guide says, that paranormal investigators believe that this is a nexus, a portal to another world. And they say, of all the tours I've ever done, this is the most haunted room that I've ever been in. And we're like, again, I don't know how you rank that, but yeah, I was in there, and they were just letting us walk around, and I was holding my recorder down by my hip, and there was nobody else around me except my wife, and she was standing right there to my left, and the recorder was on my right side. And yeah, it just sounded like somebody was either passing by me or there was just somebody who was just breathing directly into my recorder. So it's creepy. So the last time that I went to the Sorrel-Weed House a few years ago, I did not bring a recorder. So this time I did. And yeah, I recorded the whole hour-long tour of us walking through the house and it's a very interesting tour. I mean, just for the history of it, because the person who built the house was this guy who they would have like these big parties and things like that in their house, and there would be this one big room where they would have the banquet, and then they always talk about on the tour how they would, after dinner was over, they would remove the big banquet table, and then the men would go into one side of the room and the women would go into the other side, and they would close the big the big French doors. And they say, in the room where the men were, you can always smell like bourbon and tobacco. And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. And so the tour guide was always encouraging us, to speak up if we smelled anything out of the ordinary. And at that point, I had this very strong, potent cigar in my bag. I kind of thought about, pulling a prank on people and just pulling it out. But I didn't do that. So anyway, but yeah, the tour guide, also has an iPad, and she's going around showing everybody like pictures that previous tour groups have caught of the room. And there's two pictures that she shows us in particular that just really do, whatever you believe, send a chill down your spine. I'm kind of getting like goose flesh just talking about it right now. There's this one picture of like somebody caught, this African-American person in the background, in the darkness and in the shadows. And she's wearing like period costuming. And she doesn't look like, anybody in modern days would. So, and then she shows us this other picture. This is the really creepy one. Of like this little girl. But she looks like that girl from that movie The Ring, the one who crawls out of the whale. The well. Not the whale. The well. The thing with water in it that goes into the ground. The girl has like, on like a white night dress. And, like, her wet black hair is, like, combed in front of her face so you don't see her face. It's a really creepy picture, man. I'm scared. It really does just make you kind of turn to your surroundings and just really turn your senses on, But one of the reasons that I wanted to do this tour again was indeed because of this one picture and what happened when the tour guide from a few years ago showed us this picture, because it was on a very dark and stormy night when my wife and I, along with my mother-in-law, went on this tour. And something happened that actually forced my mother-in-law, who's a very strong person. She's not that squeamish. She's an actor and she gets on stage in front of people. I mean, that takes a lot to do. A lot of guts. Forced my mother-in-law to leave the group. So as I said, it's a dark and stormy night, and our tour guide, and he announces that, it is like his, first week working at this place. He shows us this picture of the girl from The Ring. And he's trying to, like, recreate the picture. He says, I need 2 volunteers to come and stand in front of this mirror. There's a gigantic mirror that looks over on the entire, room. I need 2 volunteers to stand in front of this mirror. And we're going to try and recreate this picture. So my wife raises her hand. She, along with another girl in the room on our tour group, is, they're the 2 volunteers, and they go and stand in front of this mirror. And he tells, my wife to take a picture of the mirror to see if, like, the little girl will appear in front of her. And my wife, who is less of a skeptic than I am, is not scared at all, stands in front of the mirror, and right as she takes the picture, the lights go off in the entire room, and there's like screaming and everything, and I feel like something right next to me like bump onto my person and grab onto my shirt. And I'm thinking that it's my wife. And then within about 30 seconds, the lights come back on. And I turn to my right, and it's not my wife. It's the tour guide. The tour guide is holding on to me. He freaks out on his first week on the job, and my wife is standing right there in the middle of the room, looking totally unfazed, and my mother-in-law is kind of freaking out next to the tour guide. And so we're just trying to, like, figure out what happened, because the rest of the tour I'm kind of thinking, like, oh, obviously they staged this just to scare us, or, like, it's the tour guide's first week, so obviously his coworkers are, like, you know, breaking him in, they're hazing him or whatever. And then I get to think about it more and more. No, it is a dark and stormy night, and, you know, there's, like, furniture in this room that's, like, over 100 years old, and they tell you at the beginning of the tour, do not sit on any of the furniture, do not touch anything, it's very old. And then we find out at the end of the tour that it's like, you know, the lights went out on the entire block. So it was a real event. It actually happened. And my mother-in-law asked the tour guide to please leave the tour. So anyway. But yeah, like anywhere you go in Savannah, though, they just talk about how haunted the place is. And, one of my wife and I, at the end of each night, whatever we were doing, we just loved to walk around the streets, and no matter how humid it was, and you know, it's just a very relaxing, a very lazy city. It's very quiet all the time, even with all the tourism going on. You know, like you always hear the galloping of horses going around, giving people carriage rides and things like that. And, you know, around 9 o'clock, most of the tours kind of stop, and the streets just kind of go silent. And you're just walking around this, like, beautiful southern city, just having a good time. Occasionally passing, like, a big group of people and, you know, dads pulling their kids in wagons. The kids in the wagons are, like, on their iPads playing games and things like that. And ahead of these groups of people, these dads and moms and kids, is, you know, some young tour guide who probably goes to, you know, the Savannah College of Art and Design and is paying his tuition by giving people ghost tours, you know, and you're always just kind of hearing the same exact things, you know. The Sorrel-Weed House is said to be the most haunted house in all of Savannah, which Savannah's supposed to be the most haunted city of all of the country. So this is the most haunted place in the entire country, right here, the Sorrel-Weed House. Right. So. Relight my cigar once again. It's tough to, like, have a cigar and podcast because you're talking so much. It's a good way to let a cigar last, though, I'll tell you that much. Hey.
Oh, hey, sweetheart.
I just told the story of your scary encounter with the ghost at the Sorrel-Weed House.
This time or last time?
Last time.
Oh, yeah. That was the good one.
That was the good one.
Yeah.
You didn't quite like it this one.
No, I liked this one. Mm-hmm. It was totally different. It wasn't spooky, but it was really cute.
What did you not like about it this time?
That nothing spooky happened. No, there was less atmosphere. Mm-hmm. This less one atmosphere. Didn't you kind of feel that way?
I guess so. I mean,
were you still adequately spooked?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I get spooked easily. I got
really wrapped up by, like, the families and the children that were in there who were all just like, you're the weird adult that actually is here and having fun.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that was a fun part of the tour.
Yeah.
That there was this little kid who kept on following, who, like, really attached himself to you.
Yeah.
Because I don't think his parents were really as interested in the history or the ghost as much as he was.
Yeah. His parents were cute.
Yeah. They were nice. Yeah, that's right. The dad was really fascinated by my recorder.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
He kept on saying, like, what you got there?
And they thought it was, like, actual ghost hunting equipment.
They did. They thought I was a ghost hunter.
And
that's
so
right.
did another girl who was a little bit closer to our age. She was probably still a full decade younger than us, but
But she thought I was a professional ghost hunter.
She did, and I mean, she came and sat on the couch with us, and instead of like hopping up and joining her boyfriend, she did that thing where like you want to talk to someone, and so you kind of linger, and then she started asking about the equipment and.
That's
things.
right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you came out here.
Yeah, and then she bolted.
She did.
After you were like, I don't believe in ghosts.
You really think I scared her off?
No,
I annoyed her?
I'm joking. I'm teasing you.
Okay.
I'm having a chuckle.
I know. I'm gonna laugh. Okay.
And then she got up and left, and I started taking pictures around the sofa, and I thought you were still there, and I was like, what's the little girl's name who, grabbed your ankles or whatever by the sofa? And then all of a sudden I hear just this little voice, Sarah! It's Sarah! and it was
the little kid.
It was the little kid. Yeah. And he came over next to me and started taking pictures and showing me what he got. And, it was just...
Yeah, I remember that
so
there were like there was like an extension of the tour that you could take for like a little bit more money, and I didn't really. It was like you left the house and actually got to walk around a little bit more of the streets and go to the cemetery, I think, where the Sorrels are buried.
Right.
And I decided not to do that because I just wanted to kind of like, leave early and just go walk around. And I remember the kid like waited next to us. He wanted us to come with him, and I think he was a little distressed when we didn't join him.
That kind of broke my heart because he purposely like separated from the rest of his entire family and the entire group, and just kind of stood and looked at us. And then we
I know. I kind of wish they would have given you the option to just go ahead and take, go the rest of the tour, and you could like, pay them extra, when you got off of it, but whatever. Because I would have done that.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
It was fine. We went and had. Overpriced drinks, and then stumbled around for an hour trying to find our hotel.
That's right. Yeah. We got lost. It's really easy to get lost in Savannah because every single street looks the same, and the GPS has a really hard time finding you. But we ate in like this bar that was showing Footloose, and we got really wrapped up in watching the movie Footloose.
Yeah.
And then the Goonies.
You couldn't hear the sound on any of
That's
it.
right. We couldn't, but we knew the words because we've seen that movie so many times. Yeah. I know. Okay. All right.
I have to go feed the pets.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's almost 10.
Oh my gosh, is it really?
Forgot. Yeah.
Oh, I've totally lost. Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to be out here for a little bit longer. And
All right, honey.
Okay. It was good. I'm glad that my wife came out here because there's a lot of that tour that I forgot about, I guess. Anyway. Yeah, that's not the only thing we did there, though. I mean, I don't want to like make it sound like all we did in Savannah was go to ghost tours, and I had cigars and we drank. But yeah, the major day was Thursday. Wednesday. Wednesday was kind of the big day because my mother-in-law set up a bunch of stuff for us to do that day. We went and rode horses at like a horse ranch, which that's not really my scene. I'm not really like a horse kind of guy. Because they are kind of like big animals, and I think I've had like a lifelong fear of horses ever since, Superman got on one when I was a little kid and was thrown off one. He was paralyzed. So, but my mother-in-law knows somebody, as I said, G. Marie, she knows a lot of people in Savannah, and she's constantly networking with people to try and get, ask them, to do stuff for us. And one of the people that she knows runs a horse ranch for special needs people, like people with Down syndrome and autism. And, kind of the big thing in the last few years in special needs education is equine therapy, and they, it's like apparently horses, like petting horses and riding horses is really good for neuroatypical people. And my brother-in-law, Colin, who was also there with us, he was staying with my mother-in-law for a couple of weeks. Colin is autistic. And so my mother-in-law was able to set up a session for Colin to come out and get a private trail ride. And she invited us to join him. So my wife and I went out and got on the horses and had a really nice trail ride. outside of Savannah next to Bonaventure Cemetery, which is where Johnny Mercer is buried. And we're riding along the trail and everything, and I'm actually kind of surprised at how naturally riding the horse is coming to me. I've only been on a horse a couple of times in my life. The last time was about 6 years ago. And we're riding around on the trail, and suddenly we come up on this huge tree that looks like really familiar. And I'm like, where do I know that tree from? It's like a gigantic oak tree with all the Spanish moss hanging off of it. And it comes up on this clearing. And the lady who's guiding us suddenly says, okay, this is kind of the most famous tree in all Savannah. This is the tree that Forrest and Jenny hung off of in Forrest Gump. And I'm like, all of a sudden, oh my God, that's right. Like, it's amazing how movies can sometimes, like, build memories for you that don't really exist. They, like, give you artificial memories. Like, I come out to this tree in the middle of nowhere outside of Savannah, and I just feel like I've been there before. And indeed, I totally forgot that Savannah, Georgia is where they actually filmed most of Forrest Gump. Even though the movie takes place in Alabama, they very famously shot it in and around Savannah, Georgia. Because it looks a lot more like Alabama than Alabama does. Or at least the Hollywood idea of Alabama. So we're coming out here and we're seeing this gigantic tree, this oak tree with all this, just beautiful Spanish moss coming off of it. Riding by on horses. It was just a really nice little romantic moment. Very, very cool. So yeah, after we come out with the horses, which the only real freak out moment that I had with my horse is my horse kept on wanting to like bend down and like eat the grass. And every time a horse bends down with you on top of it, you go with it. You go wherever its head goes. So every time it wanted to bend down and eat the grass, I would come down and I would like start to lose my balance in the stirrups. And I just really did feel like I was about to fall off of the thing and hit my head. Like, even though I'm wearing a helmet, it's still a pretty scary scene. So, I pull on the reins. And meanwhile, my guide is saying, don't pull too hard, don't pull too hard. And, like, I'm getting yelled at. So I'm getting, like, alternate. I don't really know what the sweet spot is. But eventually I get used to it. And, you're supposed to, like, kick the horse to get the thing to move. The thing. My horse's name was Forrest. Like, and I guess because of the tree, it's named after, the movie Forrest Gump. So, every time you're supposed to, you need to go forward because that horse will just stand still. You have to tell the horse to move on or walk on. You have to be like, walk on. Which just feels very awkward because, like I talk to my dogs all the time, but I'm not used to talking to a horse. And whenever I talk to my dogs, I can't get them to do anything. But when you talk to a horse, like horses really do respond to voice commands. They're used to it. I mean, they're genetically, it's like they've evolved that way to respond to human voices. So you can say walk onto it and it will know exactly what you mean, but sometimes you have to sort of set the pace. It's kind of like being in a car and having to set it in gear. So you have to kick the horse, and I felt really weird and odd about that because I'm not really in the nature of kicking animals. But my tour guide is like, don't be afraid of it. You're the boss. She's a very like forceful. Like there was a point where I almost like kind of started to feel very anxious. Like I almost felt like I was in the throes of a panic attack at the very beginning because our tour guide was a very forceful person. And very annoyed at the fact. I think she thought that my wife and I were experienced riders. And she is used to working with people with autism. So whenever she meets somebody who's neurotypical, like my wife and I think she thinks that we're just like masters of everything. Like we can do anything without instruction, which is, not the way that works. Being a teacher, I definitely know what I'm talking about there. So, but yeah, she was kind of yelling at us initially. She, trying to get us to do things that we weren't used to. So yeah, I kicked this horse, and it took me some time to get used to it. She said, "Don't worry about it. Forrest is made out of concrete. You can kick him all you want." And so finally, Forrest was just kind of standing there wanting to eat grass, and I finally just kicked the thing really freaking hard like she wanted me to, and he starts running. I'm like, oh my God, I'm on a horse. I'm going 15 miles an hour on this horse all of a sudden. And my guide is suddenly like, oh my God, I can't believe you got him to do that. I'm like, you told me to kick him. And he's like, how hard did you kick him? What? So I pulled on the reins and got it to slow down. She's like, that's the best I've seen all day. I felt very accomplished with myself. So, yeah, so after that, after we left Forrest, we had some time, so we went out to Tybee Island. And Tybee Island is where my wife and I stayed the first time we ever came out to Savannah. It's this beautiful stretch of seashore on the Atlantic Ocean. We didn't go to the beach this time. We went out there. We decided to go to Fort Pulaski, which is a national monument. It's run by the National Park Service. And we've driven by Fort Pulaski several times. We've never gone. So and we end up going to this. It's basically just this giant. I don't know, forts, if you've ever been to them, are basically just big brick walls with a big green space between them. But, I mean, this one was a little bit different because it does have this very fascinating story. The place was built after the War of 1812. The United States was kind of deciding that, if we ever get invaded by the French again, we need to do something about it. So they built this gigantic, fort to defend themselves against French invaders. And somehow it took them more than 60 years to build, or 50 years to build. And by the time they finished the thing, it was 1860. And so before the federal government could take control of the fort that they had built, they had to take it back. The South suddenly had control of Fort Pulaski. And they had it for something like 2 years before the federal troops finally took it over. It took them about 30 hours to take control of the fort. And then they had it, and basically after the federal troops had it, there was really nothing for them to do at the fort. They had used it to do what they needed to do, which was close down the South's supply chain of armaments. And so basically they just kind of waited out the rest of the war there, the Yankees. And when the Civil War ended, there was really no other need for the fort. They weren't really afraid that we were going to get, invaded by the French at that point, or anybody else for that matter. So pretty much as soon as the thing got built, it was really only used for a couple of years, and then after the Civil War, it became a national monument. It's been a national monument pretty much. It was basically built to just be a monument. So it was a beautiful place. My wife and I, we walked around the entire perimeter, upstairs and down. The upstairs had all these cannons on it that looked out onto the sea and everything. And what was really fascinating is there was all this amazing history around us. But people weren't really concerned about that. What they really loved was there was a fig tree in like the southeast corner of the fort, and you could go up and pick your figs, and everybody just got so excited about this. You know, there's a little sign that says, like, you know, only pick a fig if you intend to eat it. You know, be a good steward. And I had never eaten a fresh fig before. And I decided to have one, and before long, I didn't care about the history anymore. I was just eating figs. So, you know. So, yeah. And then that night, you know, we went out to eat at the Pink House, and once again, my mother-in-law working her connections. You know, this is a place that has two restaurants in it. You know, one is upstairs, one is downstairs in the cellar. And again, it's a very historic building, restored by Jim Williams in the 1950s. But the tavern, you have to walk downstairs to get into it, and it's like this very dimly lit room. And we go in, and there's a friend of my mother-in-law's who's playing the piano. He's like the house musician. And he comes in once a week, and he plays all the standards of, you know, kind of he plays, you know, the Piano Man by Billy Joel. When we were walking in there, he was playing Ophelia, which I don't know who originally recorded Ophelia. But I always knew about it from the band's Last Waltz concert. But yeah, it was just a really nice atmosphere. And we go down there, and very dimly lit, and sit down with a couple of friends of my mom's. One of the women is, or the woman that is there is it's a husband and wife. The wife is like a student of my mom's, even though she's my mom's age, but she takes acting classes with my mother-in-law, sorry. And her husband, who's there, his name's Mike, like me. It's a good name, so we bond over that for a while. It's a common name, but we bond over it. He's a retired detective from Chicago, so I'm sitting there having dinner with an acting student of my mother-in-law's and a retired detective from Chicago. And you know, they're just like these gypsies. You know, they've been all over the country. They used to live in California together, and they've been out in Savannah ever since he retired back in something like 2001. And yeah, we're just like having dinner there, like listening to G. Marie's friend Kenny play the piano. And all the while I'm looking around this place, and I'm just like, this is just a beautiful. I just wonder what the history of this place is. Turns out, like, it was a Revolutionary War headquarters of the Continental Army. Like, they set in this area, in this very room, next to the gigantic fireplace where I was eating my $58 steak, just planning the Revolutionary War. Fascinating. One point I had to get up and excuse myself and go to the bathroom, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, you know, said, well, when you go in there, you know, thank Mr. Bartleby. I'm like, who's Mr. Bartleby? And he's like, oh, he's the ghost that haunts the bathroom. It's like on that pub crawl that we did a few years ago. You know, we start out at the Sixpence Pub, and I excuse myself at one point to go to the bathroom, and, you know, they tell me to, whenever I look in the mirror, you know, just give a good long stare, because there's supposed to be like a ghost that looks back out at you, which just scared me half to death. And of all the beer that I had to drink that night, I don't think I, you know, peed until we got back to our hotel on Tybee Island. At that point, I was just convinced that every single bathroom in Savannah, Georgia is haunted.
Said, do me a favor, son, won't you stay and keep Anthony company? Said, take a load off Annie, take a load for free, take a load off Annie.
right on me.
Jean Marie. Jean Marie, if I say it enough times, I might remember Jean Marie.
What'd you say?
So that's my mom.
That's my mom.
You take Jack, my dog.
Now she's famous.
I know.
Chester, no, I'm a peaceful man. Said, give me a favor, son. Feed on whatever you can. Said, take a load off Annie. Take a load off Annie. Take a load off Annie. Yes, Annie. You put the load right on Jean Marie. Trying to say it enough times so I never forget it again.
Yeah, so yeah, here I am now in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a Friday night. As my wife just reminded me around 10:30, my complete sense of time is off right now, as it always is after a big vacation. You know, we weren't out of town 30 minutes on Monday before I completely forgot what day of the week it was. You know, because Mondays, like, even during the summer, you know, I'm used to, like, doing things, being busy. You know, during the summer I teach summer camp or whatever. I have projects that I work on. You know, Monday is typically a very busy, stressful day. But there I am going on vacation. And now here I am on a Friday night. And it's pretty much the same as every other Friday night. You know, I'm out here in the podcast alley, you know, having a cigar. The rain has stopped. It was raining pretty heavily earlier. Yeah, I would say, you know, even though last night was kind of an anxious adventure, you know, it's just like the last time I went to Amelia Island 26 years ago, with a hotel room that flooded so badly we had to change rooms, and searching high and low for a Grand Slam breakfast, and climbing out of the second floor balcony down to the first floor. I had to ask my mom, by the way, why did I do that? And she said, because there was a cat down there that you really wanted to pet. So it wasn't just because I could, it's because I just really wanted to pet a cat, apparently. Yeah, I remember that 26 years later, and I think, like, you know, 26 years later, 26 years from tonight, you know, I will probably remember, you know, I may remember the ghost tour and the horseback ride and the pink house and Fort Pulaski, all the things that went right. But I will most likely first remember searching for a plunger in a huge empty hotel that resembled The Shining. Walking into a big, dark bar and restaurant, expecting to find Lloyd the bartender offering me a whiskey. Keep your eyes open.